Okay, so we have quorum and we still have 1 minute to go. All right, so I have 6 o'clock, so I'm going to get started. As a preliminary matter, this is Judy Vetter, Chair. Please permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Mark Adler?
In the affirmative.
Vikram Chhabra?
Present.
Dennis O'Connell? Aaron Howard? I can see Aaron.
Oh, here.
Okay. Hannah Kane?
Present.
Jordan Rubin?
Here.
Carlos Garcias? Okay, and Mark Murray.
Present.
Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Kevin Mizikar?
Present.
Kristen Lass?
Present.
And Alexander Matiz.
Present.
Good evening to you all. This open meeting of the Finance Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020. Due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus, the order allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely as long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. For this meeting, the Finance Committee is convening by Google Meet as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please be sure to press *6 to mute your device. The meeting will feature public comment. This meeting will feature public comment. Please wait until I open the item for public comment and press *6 to unmute your device. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call. At this time, I'm going to call to order the April 8, 2021 Finance Committee meeting. The first order of business is accepting of the meeting minutes of April 1, 2021. Was there any? Thank you. Second?
Second.
Okay, so we're now going to take a roll call vote for the acceptance of the meeting. Mark Adler?
Aye.
Vikram Chhabra?
Aye.
Dennis O'Connell? All right, so Dennis is not here. Aaron Howard?
Aye.
Hannah Kane?
Aye.
Jordan Rubin?
Aye.
Carlos Garcia?
Aye.
Mark Murray?
Aye.
Judy Vetter? Aye. The meeting minutes of April 1 have been accepted. We'll now move on to item 3, the town manager's report. Mr. Mizikar?
Good evening, members of the Finance Committee. Looking forward to our next couple of meetings discussion, and I'm going to start off this evening with my report with an overview of the overall budget, and then you'll open the public hearing, and we'll begin with departments, starting with public safety this evening. So I just want to make a few preliminary comments. Obviously, this year is a little bit different than prior years, as we'll be considering a few sets of numbers rather than just a single fiscal projection. And this evening, department heads will be speaking primarily about their budget model that assumes an override vote passes unless they explicitly note that they're speaking about something else. We just wanted to try to keep that as clear as possible for you. So let me get this going. Just also preliminarily, so we're using a little bit different slides than we used last year in order to accommodate the extra level of information that we have with 3 budget models. So if there's the Finance Committee certainly has access to the native files through your drive, and we've emailed them out. But if you have any questions or need me to zoom in, please just let me know. I'm happy to do that. So this is our first evening, and all this information is available online and available to the public, including the detailed line item budget for all 3 scenarios, fiscal 1, fiscal 2, and fiscal projection 3. Fiscal projection 1 represents the budget that was originally presented on February 16th, 2021. Fiscal projection 2 represents a scenario where an override vote that's scheduled for the May 4th ballot would not pass, and fiscal projection 3 is a model where the $9.5 million override would pass. Those documents can be accessed both off the Town of Shrewsbury's website and through an additional link through our website at our ClearGov Transparency Center. So prior to the public hearing, I'm going to just walk through a financial overview and overview of revenues and expenditures. With the financial overview, I'll be talking about the overall financial position, the bond rating, the reserve levels of the town, and the fiscal year 21 revenues year to date. We're very fortunate and continue to maintain a AAA bond rating, which is the highest bond rating available to municipalities and other entities through Standard & Poor's Global Credit Rating Services. It's essentially our credit rating that indicates to the market our ability to repay any debt that we issue. And the higher your bond rating, again, ours being the highest, means the lower the interest rates that we receive, and therefore the less interest that residents and taxpayers have to pay when we incur debt for various projects that they approve. Part of the reason that we have such a strong credit rating is our maintenance and continuing contributions to reserves. Our general stabilization fund is at almost $2.3 million. That represents 1.8% of the fiscal year 21 budget. The policy level set by the Board of Selectmen is 5%, but we continue to build towards that, and Standard & Poor's is aware of our continuing contributions to General Stabilization Fund, and we would contribute additional funding for fiscal year 2022 through a warrant article at the May town meeting, which we'll discuss at a future meeting. Certified free cash. Free cash is available fund balance that's unrestricted at the end of any given fiscal year. It's primarily made up of 3 different buckets of funding. Free cash that was not expended in any prior year, revenues that were received greater than revenues budgeted, and any funds that were appropriated within the operating budget but not expended during the fiscal year and thus turned back. So free cash is considered a one-time revenue source, and we've been managing and limiting the use of free cash within the operating budget as not to exacerbate the structural deficit that we have been experiencing. Free cash, it totals 5.85% of the fiscal year 21 budget. The policy level set by the Board of Selectmen is between 3 and 5% of the fiscal year budget. So we are at policy level. Obviously, that helps with General Stabilization Fund being below policy level, bringing our total reserves to $9,548,000. If we look at fiscal year 21 revenues, 2 primary categories that we track throughout the year that are variable and dependent on taxpayers making tax payment, first and foremost, and various other payments, obviously for local receipts. It's a diverse category that includes things like licenses and permits, interest that we earn in the market for any investments that we have on cash that's not being utilized, penalties, interests, and our largest category being excise taxes, motor vehicle excise tax, being the single largest category, carrying about $6 million of our roughly $11 million in local receipts. Year to date, I'm very pleased that we've collected 90.2%. That puts us on pace very comfortably 3/4 of the way through the fiscal year. These numbers are as of March 31st. We certainly have to see considerable collections still within the motor vehicle excise tax, but this puts us in a really good position in comparison to prior years, knowing that we will at least very likely achieve the budgeted level and not have to deal with any revenue deficits for local receipts. And then the property tax, we're roughly 74% collected. This is a very traditional amount of collected 3/4 of the way through the year. It's exactly within 1% of what we collected in fiscal year 2019, which was obviously a more normal year rather than fiscal year 21. So we're very pleased with this level of collection, and also puts us in a good position to meet our budgeted mark for that, our main revenue source for the fiscal year. So if I look at local receipts briefly, as we've talked in the past, we are experiencing lower local receipts, which is our third largest revenue category. They are the most economic, elastic, and depending on the general ability for residents and taxpayers to make discretionary purchases, including motor vehicle excise payments. Purchasing new cars is a major driver of that, not just the ongoing maintenance and payments, since motor vehicle excise tax declines over years. And if we were to trend the previous 5 years prior to the pandemic, we are experiencing a significant revenue deficit. In compared to where we should have been, we would have projected about 14.7 million, and instead our fiscal year 22 budgeted number is 10.9 million. So moving a little further into the overall revenues that are going to be available and projected to be available for the fiscal year, I've laid out two numbers that you see on the screen. On the far right, two columns, fiscal projection 1 and fiscal projection 2. Fiscal projection 3 is the same exact numbers as fiscal projection 2, with the exception of introducing a $9.5 million override, which we've discussed plenty over your previous meetings. So I think these are the most relevant numbers to look at. Through the yellowed cells, I'm indicating any changes between fiscal projection 1 and 2, and I'd like to just run through those really quick with you because I think they're important. So we're able to anticipate a slight amount of additional aid related to our Chapter 90 letter that we've received from the Baker-Polito administration. So it's just a slight uptick of about $84. And I was also pleased to receive word earlier this week from Representative Kane that the House and Senate Ways and Means have come to agreement that is nearly identical to the governor's budget, which means things like unrestricted general government aid will be projected at 3.5% higher than the current year. So that gives us great stability going into this budget process. With regards to sewer revenue, we are able to anticipate a little bit of additional use of the sewer surplus fund. We've created a long-term financial plan that was really authored by David Snowden, the Business Management Division Director, with the setting of a new sewer rate that will go into effect for July 1st. That gives us comfort in the long term, and we're going to take on a couple additional capital projects. With regards to water revenue, with fiscal projection 1, we had a very limited capital plan in place, and we've further filled that out, which is the use of additional revenues, mainly rate revenues that we have projected are available to the water surplus, and we will collect next year. Water rate collections are up and are very strong. Obviously, we think part of that's related to the pandemic. So with additional time in the home for more people, we'll have to monitor that closely throughout the fiscal year. Title V loan payment revenue is because the state has authorized to repay in full our outstanding Title V loan obligations in fiscal year 22. So this will be the last year that we pay back on that. And those were revenues that came in through private loans to homeowners to replace septic systems. Account transfers for the annual town meeting will be the movement of funds from a public buildings capital improvement project at the Parker Road facility. Their roof replacement came in well over budget, and we'll transfer that into an account for the town hall roof replacement. And then the Cable Public Access Fund represents an update provided by Mr. Mark Serra as to the revenues they anticipate for the fiscal year. So fiscal projection 2 in total is 155,591,392, with the vast majority nearly 138 million being dedicated to the operating budget, which we will discuss in detail throughout this hearing process. And we've talked in the past about this, that not all of our revenue is available for complete discretionary use. Some of it is restricted for particular purposes. Actually, the vast majority of new revenues, 5.5 of the 8.7, is restricted into what it can be used for, leaving only a little less than $4 million of discretionary revenue available throughout the rest of the budget. We've talked a lot in the past, and I think it's relevant to just touch on it before the public hearing process this evening, that we are experiencing a structural deficit wherein recurring revenues are not able to keep pace with the current expenditure trends, despite while we are trying to maintain level services and not expand services. Our cost of doing business year over year continues to outpace the new revenue that we receive, and thus the request for an operational override being asked on the May 4th ballot. So in general, as I previously noted, for fiscal projection 3, we're requesting about $138 million. That would be only subject to the availability of funds received through a positive override outcome. And otherwise, the other two scenarios request the use of roughly $132.8 million with slight variability between those two numbers. And we'll be very happy to walk through those details. Obviously, the largest deficit that is identified in fiscal projection 1 and 2 scenarios is attributable to the school department, and it ranges from $4.9 to $4.8 million, depending on the model that we use. So with that, Madam Chair, I will turn it back over to you to begin the public hearing process if there's no questions.
Okay, at this point then, I call to order the public hearing, and we'll move into, that brings us to the police department. Is that where we're going to start? Or public safety?
That is correct, the police department, yes.
Okay.
So, Madam Chair, we just need to open the public hearing through a vote of the committee.
Okay. All right. May I get a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
So moved.
Can I get a
Second.
second? Okay, now I'm going to do a roll call. Mark Adler,
Aye.
Vikram Chhabra,
Aye.
Dennis O'Connell,
Aye.
Aaron Howard,
Aye.
Hannah Kane,
Aye.
Jordan Rubin,
Aye.
Carlos Garcia,
Aye.
Mark Murray,
Aye.
Judy Vetter. Aye. The public hearing is now open. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. It's my pleasure. I believe this is first time before the Finance Committee to introduce to you Chief Kevin Anderson. Chief Anderson was promoted to his position after serving in all lower ranks of the police department. He was promoted to chief in July of 2020. I'm very happy with his forward thinking, his plan for the department, and I will turn it over to him for his overview for his budget request. So go ahead, Chief.
Good evening, everybody. I think it's important when you talk about staffing in a police department that you have an overview of not only the department, but the community as well. So I'm just going to give a brief overview of the department and the community. Currently, we have 67 employees serving about 37,000 residents. The department has 51 sworn officers, 9 dispatchers, 5 administrative clerks, and 1 animal control officer. In 2020, there were approximately 35,000 calls for service. This is a bit lower than our normal number of incidents. The reduction is most likely reflective of the circumstances of the challenging year due to COVID. A lot of businesses were closed, cancellation of special events and activities, and reduced traffic with many people staying home. A more accurate number for our department on a yearly basis would be about 39,000 incidents, and that's what we had in 2019. I think also when you talk about staffing, you have to talk about the unique characteristics of the town. The town of Shrewsbury is about 41 miles west of Boston. It's bordered by the second largest city, which is Worcester, and it has 4 major highways that go through the town, and also it has Lake Quinsigamond, which attracts a large recreational population during the summer months. So this creates some challenges for the department during those months. The town of Shrewsbury operates more like a city with a swell of traffic in the daytime population with the amount of daily commercial business and traffic volume. And it's also important to note that Shrewsbury is within 10 miles to 10 highly ranked colleges, as well as multiple large biotech firms. So I first took over, part of my first year strategic plan was to conduct a SWOT analysis of the department. SWOT analysis, if you're not familiar with that, it's It's an acronym that means you identify your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your possible issues with the department. And that's what we did was we came up with about 15 areas that we want to continue to do well and also improve in. And when we were going over the staffing portion of the 5-year strategic plan, we determined that Shrewsbury, as we all know, is experiencing both commercial and residential growth. And according to the FBI statistics, national average staffing level is about 2.2 sworn officers per 1,000. Currently, Shrewsbury has about 1.34 officers. And based on this ratio, we're approximately 30 sworn officers short of the national average and about 21 sworn officers short of the New England average. Shrewsbury officer staffing is also well below the comparable communities within the state of Massachusetts. A shortage of personnel presents considerable challenges to the department. Although we operate more like a larger city, currently we don't have the flexibility to reassign staff when needed or allocate personnel during a high impact, low frequency event such as a pandemic. Patrol shifts are routinely understaffed in response to calls for service are prioritized and often delayed. Many times we only have enough officers to answer calls for service, and we're unable to commit officers to things like traffic enforcement, community policing, including working with Shrewsbury's youth, elder affairs, and those with substance use and mental health concerns. Also, when considering this, it's important to note that if I was given permission to hire an officer today, it can take up to 12 to 14 months before that officer is background checks completed, the hiring process is completed, and they're done with their field training. During the first year strategic plan process and SWOT analysis, it was identified by myself and members of the police department that the citizens of Shrewsbury would substantially benefit from a dedicated community service division. Community service division would work closely with the town schools, residents, business, and community outreach organizations in order to identify priorities for the town. This is our long-term plan. This is our 5-year strategic plan, and that is a goal of mine as police chief. We did identify many communities within the state that are comparable, and most of them do have dedicated community service divisions. And those were specifically towns that were in 5,000 of population to ours. Also, during our SWOT analysis and reviewing the department's needs, the community service division was identified as a major issue that we should be expanding on. But currently what we need for immediate staffing needs, due to call volume, complexity of calls for service, we need to increase the minimum manning recommended from 4 to 5 on the day shift, from 5 to 6 on the evening shift, and from 3 to 4 on the midnight shift. Additionally, I would like to request a sergeant that would be in charge of policy and oversight. Currently, we're going to be reviewing and updating all our policies within the department. And that's going to be conducted by an outside agency, and they need a sergeant or above that will be assisting them on a full-time basis. Also, over this last several years, our mental health calls have increased significantly. So I will be requesting 1 mental health clinician. So for fiscal 2022, on behalf of the department, I'm requesting 1 sergeant, 3 additional officers, and 1 mental health clinician. If anybody has any questions, feel free.
Okay, I'm going to start with the committee members. I'm going to just run down quickly, and then after I get down through the committee members, then I'll open it up for the public if they have any questions. Mark Adler?
No.
Vikram Chhabra?
Yes, Madam Chair, if I could just ask the chief just one minor question. Chief Anderson, thank you for that great presentation. I was looking at the slide and I was just wondering, you requested very understandably, I think 1 mental health expert as well. And I was just wondering where in the slide that fits in, because the math didn't work out in terms of the other requests.
I don't know, Kevin. Are you familiar with that?
Because there are four additions in FP3, and I think we're asking for 5.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And it's like an error on the slide. So we would have to increase the supervisors and advanced technical, that's my fault, to 64. So it'd be 70 total FTE. Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. No other comments or questions. Thank you.
Dennis O'Connell,
No comments.
Aaron Howard,
No questions. Thanks.
Hannah Kane.
Yes, thank you. One question. Thank you, Chief, for that presentation. In terms of your strategic plan that you've outlined, is there anything that cannot be accomplished if the override is passed relative to your strategic plan? Are you able to fulfill the vision that you've set out if we do pass the successful override?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Anything else, Hannah, or is that you good? Okay, Jordan Rubin. All right, Carlos Casillas,
No questions at the moment. Thank you.
Mark Murray.
I'm good, Judy.
All right, great. Thank you, Chief. I don't have any follow-up questions. So at this point, I'd like to open it up for public comment and questions. I'm not able to see, everyone that's on. So if you could speak up if you have a question. Going once, twice. Okay, I don't hear anything. Thank you, Chief. We're at this point, then we'll move on to the fire department.
Thank you, everybody.
Madam Chair, if I could, I know traditionally, and just in case they were waiting for this, that the Board of Selectmen has been called upon. So I know several members are on this evening, and I didn't know if they were just looking for that or if they had no questions. I just wanted to. It's a little tough, as you said, to see with who's on a virtual meeting. So
okay. All right. Beth, do you have your hand? Do I see a hand thing?
Yes.
Up? Okay.
Yeah,
all
Judy, again, with the virtual, I wasn't really sure how to jump in here.
Okay.
But I did have one question for the chief before he moves on. Could you outline a little bit of what your plans are to deal with some of the increased activity that we've been seeing on Lake Quincy within the budget that you presented this evening? Do you have some increases to staffing that are dedicated to the issues of people on the lake, too many people on the lake, boats that aren't registered, those sorts of things?
Beth, that's actually a really good point. Part of that increase in that staffing would allow me, because the minimum staffing on days and evenings would increase, that would allow me to be able to have a boat operator and also an assistant boat operator. Because what we've found that we've been operating out there with one operator and sometimes no operator, but one operator is unsafe. You're actually pulling up to boats and asking them to assist you when you may be giving them a citation. So it's, yeah, that would definitely help.
Thank you.
And just a comment, actually the raised hand, I think, causes you to move up onto the screen. So that seemed to work well. So so next time what I'll do is I'll go down through the committee, I'll go to the Board of Selectmen. And so if the Board of Selectmen want to do the hand raising, and then the public, if there's a hand raising, great. All right, so then that'll take us now to the fire department.
Okay, good evening, everyone. For those of you that might not know me, I'm Jim Vona, Fire Chief. I've been Fire Chief since 2010 here in town. Basically, since 2013, I've been advocating for also an increase in staffing to get us up to some nationally recognized standards of safety, and also help with a much more effective response. In the last few years, 4 years or so, we've been able to add a deputy chief position, which the bulk of the deputy chief's work revolves on a daily basis, at least, around fire prevention, inspection, code enforcement, works very closely with the building inspector's office. We've also, in the last year or so, added 4 firefighters to Station 2. We have 3 stations. Our outlying station, Station 2, down next to Tavern in the Square and CVS, for years had only 2 firefighters and no supervisor. And now we have 3 firefighters there. And back in July, we promoted 4 firefighters to lieutenant as a temporary, on a temporary provisional basis. And now through the civil service process, we promoted 4 firefighters to the permanent lieutenant position. This also leaves us with Station 3, which only has 2 firefighters, no supervisor. And we're hoping to get money through a grant to fund that position. This current fiscal situation with the federal government, as far as what's called a SAFER grant, is 100% paid for the first 3 years of the, the conditions of the grant itself. The previous grant that we got for the 4 positions paid 75%, 75%, and then 35%. And then in the 4th year, it becomes the responsibility of the town. We have an application in right now. We would find out most likely in late August or early September. That's when traditionally the awards start going out. Depending on how things go with the override vote, it's something I've discussed with the town manager. If we can afford to do it, then we could accept the grant. If it's not affordable, you could always, turn down the grant. If everything goes in a positive fashion financially, we'd be looking at putting on 4 more firefighters, potentially in early 2022, and then potentially promoting 4 more firefighters to the rank of lieutenant. That would give us, 3 fully functional stations with at least a 3-man crew. Currently work out of headquarters with a captain that's in charge of the shift, and either 3 or 4 firefighters, depending on if anyone is out sick or if there are, vacation or anything like that. But that's what our staffing configuration is. By all national standards, we are pretty low. And, Kevin has been very good working with us to try to achieve these goals. One of the things that we're hoping to do is even the current grant that we have right now that will run out in the next year and a half, is the federal government has changed some of the guidelines so that we could potentially go for a competitive grant that would continue to pay for those positions, at least a percentage of it. So I just want to be clear to you that, I worked for Dan Magado for a number of years, and a number of times I went to him and asked him for things, and he said, "It sounds great, Chief. How do you want to pay for it?" And so I learned early on to try to find every possible way that we could get donations, that we could get grants, that we could, I worked with the town manager, both Kevin and Dan, with, doing the ambulance contract for the town. Years ago, when I first became chief, we were paying roughly $95,000 a year to UMass for them to come in and basically run an ambulance out of our Station 2. And we were paying them almost $100,000 a year to provide this service. And I had been, in contact with a number of different ambulance companies that were willing to bid on that contract for free. And we sat down years ago, and we got the receipts from UMass, and it was over $3.5 million a year that they were pulling in from ambulance receipts. And when it came down to it, we came to an agreement where they stopped paying for that, and that was where I kind of said to Dan at the time, the money that we save on that could go towards a fire prevention officer for the town. So we try to be creative any way we can with bringing in funds. Mrs. Barbara Donahue has been extremely generous to us here at the fire department. She purchased a hovercraft for us. She purchased a Ribcraft boat. Last year, we were asking for replacement of our what's called our command vehicle that the captains respond to calls on. And we asked her, when it got cut out of the budget last year, we asked her if she'd be interested in funding that, and she agreed to that as well. So she's been tremendously generous to us. We've also gotten, a number of small donations from folks around town, and we try to invest back into equipment and programs as best we can. I don't know if anybody has any questions on either staffing or on what we're doing to try to generate revenue or find revenue from outside of the department. But I can assure you, every grant that comes along, and if I miss one, Hannah will definitely send me over some information, or Kevin will send me some information. But we are constantly looking to defray the cost of operating this department through grants and donations and anything else. I don't know if anybody has any questions or comments or.
Thank you, Chief. So let's try the hand raise feature. So we'll start with the Finance Committee. If anybody's got a question or a comment, can you please do the raise the hand? Okay. Dennis, we'll start with Dennis O'Connell.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chief Rana, for the presentation. You basically said that you're fairly understaffed as well by national, state norms. How is that affecting the current service? I mean, what are we seeing as residents, the impact of that?
Well, what it does is it increases our ability to fight a fire. And, there are a lot of tasks that each firefighter has to take. When we get to a fire scene, when we have a 3-man crew, we have a supervisor who's usually second on the fire hose. And then we have somebody that runs the pump at the engine, pump operator, basically, that drives the truck there and then operates the pressures on the hose line and everything. It's a big safety issue. Now, when we go out on Station 3, we only have 2 firefighters and no supervisor. So you could have a brand new guy on the hose line. You have your second firefighter, either second on the hose line, and then no pump operator, which is against everything safety-wise that we've been, taught over the years. But unfortunately, we've been short-staffed, so a lot of times it makes for a delay in how fast we can attack a fire. There's a lot of things that have to be done, and you just can't get to them all.
Now, did the other stations help out in those cases? Or
they do, but they definitely do, because if there's a fire, we have to run all 3 stations, and we also have mutual aid agreements with Westboro and Northborough and the rest of the contiguous towns, plus our fire district, to bring in more help initially, because if it's a big operation, we'd run out of resources really quickly. And firefighting is a labor intensive type of job, and guys need to rest after a certain amount of time when you're exposed to the heat and 60 or 70 pounds worth of gear. And,
So
I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example. New York City, they have a ladder truck, or an engine. They go out with 5 or 6 guys. Granted, that's a much bigger, but they might be putting out a house that looks exactly like a house in town here, but they have 10 times as many people to do it. Same thing in Worcester. I mean, there's houses in Worcester that are exactly like houses in Shrewsbury. When they pull up to a fire call, they've got a minimum of 21 or 22 people plus 2 chiefs and safety officers. I've been to, some fires over in Worcester and seen those type of operations, and it's just, there's a lot more that can get done when you have that many hands to help out.
Get a quick follow-up to that. With the short staffing to begin with, is that causing a lot more overtime to be used to fill in if someone's sick or something else that you just need to fill in? Is it actually costing us money to be understaffed?
It can, especially if there are long-term injuries. We currently have a firefighter that's been out for about 6 months with an injury. And, every time that someone is on vacation or out sick on that shift, it's costing us overtime. The likelihood of injuries increases when you don't have the proper number of staffs too, because you're trying to do more things, and you're overexerting yourself at times. And it's not like we're going to 10 fires a day or anything like that, but when we do have them, it's a dangerous job. What can I say?
Don't understand.
They're injured.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay, the next raised hand, Mark Adler.
Thank you. Hey, Jim, nice to see you. I can't believe you've been here for 11 years. It's
11. Well, I've actually been here almost 29 years.
Sure.
Right.
Right.
But 11 years going into my 12th year as chief.
So where are we on the idea of bringing the ambulance service in-house?
That is not something that we're looking at right now. I think we've had some discussions about possibly studying it. There are advantages potentially. Kevin could speak on this better than I could, because he ran an ambulance service when he was over in Leicester. It wouldn't pay for the whole department, but it could defray cost. But you also have, other costs involved, like retirement for more guys. We'd have to hire anywhere between 12 and 16 more people to run 2 or 3 ambulances. You'd have to purchase ambulances. The other part of it, there's a lot of training that goes through that. A lot of my guys, I have 2 paramedics, and I have about 15, 20 guys that are EMTs, and the rest that are just emergency first responders. To keep the current level of service, which is paramedic level, we'd have to train more people up to that level or hire a lot of paramedics. Currently, we're in the civil service system, which is extremely competitive and difficult to find enough paramedics. We could never, through civil service, hire. I don't think we could hire 5 paramedics through civil service, never mind 12 or 15 or 16. I'll let Kevin speak a little bit more on that.
I certainly agree with what the chief says, and the agreement. I think there's a certain commercial you may see on TV these days that talks about free. So that's the agreement that we have with UMass. It's a 0 cost contract. Literally, when there's a medical call that goes out and the ambulance leaves the station, another one is dispatched to Shrewsbury to backfill the station or go directly to the scene. So it is a very favorable deal. Should that change in the future, we absolutely would have to pursue, and even before that, consider pursuing what the costs are, so we know. And then, just the last one other part, normally most towns also then have to enter or wisely enter into a contract to outsource the billing. So that's something that you don't think about on the ambulance side. So we get the revenue, but that has to be managed. And, you know, you're then sending a bill out from the town of Shrewsbury after someone just had a very traumatic day or a car accident. And that's the next thing that they see in the mail. And then you're trying to collect on that past due, and what are the rates, and, you know, what's set by the federal government is, you know, limits and things like that. It's a very complicated process. Doesn't mean that we couldn't do it. I just think it's so advantageous with the relationship that we have with UMass right now that it'd be very hard to overcome that.
Thank you.
I've seen it happen in other communities. You know, you need at least a year to study it, and then it's usually 3 to 5 years to make that transition. The unique, you know, situation that we hear in Shrewsbury is we don't have a hospital in Shrewsbury, but 100 feet over the line is our, you know, is our level 1 trauma center. So there is a quick turnover in getting the patients there and then getting a truck back to Shrewsbury. Oftentimes, Northborough, Westborough, and other ambulance services are also backfill. So there's always ambulances and talented people available. If, like Kevin said, if they ever decided not to offer that service in Worcester, then, you know, it'd have to go back out and figure out, you know, do we bring in AMR or MedStar or some other Patriot, some other company like that, or do we go it on our own? But it's, like Kevin said, it's a very complicated and time-consuming process too.
Okay, thank you very much.
The next question, Hannah Kane.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief, for that overview. Could you go back for a second and just talk about, did you mention that you're looking at another SAFER grant that is 100% funded for 3 years? Is that what you were saying?
Yes, the federal government has put out another funding notice of opportunity, which we did put in the application. There's, you know, you don't have to commit to it. There's no commitment at all. But it is 100% for 3 years. At the end of the 3 years, if you didn't have the money to fund it, then you don't have to continue the positions. There has been more money put into the fire service in general on the national level in the last year or so, and there are different opportunities available to continue that. So we would always try to, you know, get whatever we could for additional funding that way through the grant process. But yeah, we have a grant in right now, but, you know, it's with the understanding with Kevin that we might not be able to accept it. But when that
would be for another 4 firefighters, the way it's constructed. You'd bring up.
It would be for 4 more firefighters. Yes.
Okay, and when would be the time frame that we would? I know you said August or September, but would it be for the following fiscal year, like, theoretically, or is this something that could be coming in during the year now that we'd have to consider?
It could potentially come in through this fiscal year, but the financial impact for the first 3 years is very, very low.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any further hands from the Finance Committee, so at this point, I'm going to ask if the Board of Selectmen have any questions, and if they do, could they please click on the raise hand? Okay, so the first one, Mo DiPaolo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I could ask the Chief, on the current SAFER grant that we're under, we have to commit to not laying off any firefighters for a number of years after the phase-out period from the federal government.
And that was the initial agreement. That has changed going forward because they're finding that, especially big cities and even in a lot of towns, if they don't have the money, they don't have the money. So how do you force them to keep people on that they can't afford to pay? So So it's become definitely a little bit more liberal that way, but it's also they've also got more money going into it now to try to sustain it.
Okay, thank you. If I could ask a follow-up.
Certainly.
Comment. This does make it more advantageous because in the past we were always concerned about what happens if we get into a bind. So that's a big improvement. You don't want to hire somebody with the intention of laying somebody off, but at least if you get into a bind, you know you have some flexibility. My last question is when we put on 4 firefighters like we did the last time, what was the expense of paying for all the turnout gear and stuff that we had to buy? Because that wasn't covered in the grant, right?
Correct. The turnout gear these days, which is, if you didn't know, it's the helmet, the coat, the boots. They have hoods, gloves. All this equipment is roughly $3,000 to $3,500 per person, and a lot of the guys, have a second set of gear as well. Sometimes we can take that from folks that have retired, or we have a few extra coats here from basically from retirees and stuff. But the Department of Fire Services this year put out a $20,000 grant, which it was just released that we were successful in getting that, which would pay for 4 or 5 sets of gear. We actually put in for 5 sets of gear that would cover that cost. That grant opportunity, I recently had a meeting with the marshal on that, will continue for the next 4 years after this year. There's $5 million a year allocated to the Department of Fire Services for these grants, and for Fire Academy operations as well. So I'm confident that we'll be able, as long as you fill out the paperwork correctly and show a need, you should be able to get the same thing for the next 4 years. So we currently just got that grant, and we're putting in orders for the equipment right now. So that wouldn't be a cost that the town had to incur.
Okay, so I do not see any further Board of Selectmen hands. So at this point, I'm going to open up for public. Oh, Beth,
Judy,
okay.
sorry. I put it down and then put it back up when Mo was finished. I just had one question for the chief. I'm understanding that the SAFER grant can't be accepted without passage of the override. Just for people who are watching at home, as I am, just the amount that it costs to hire 4 additional firefighters, so that there's some context around what the SAFER grant actually is worth dollar-wise.
Chief, do you want me to handle that?
Yeah, if you have that figure right in front of you, Kevin.
I do. Great. Yep. So now the average annual cost for 4 firefighters is around $360,000. So obviously, it's a 3-year grant. So, you take that times 3. Not all of those costs are 100% eligible for the grant. So the town would bear roughly about $60,000 per year. So about $300,000 per year is the value of the grant.
Thank you.
Okay, so I don't see any other Board of Selectmen's hands. So at this point, I'm going to go to opening it up to the public. Again, if you have a question, please click on the raised hand. It's on the bottom. I'm not seeing any. So thank you very much, Chief. We appreciate the report and everything that you do. At this point, we are now going to move on to emergency management.
If I could just go further, we do have a few capital items that were on the list as well. One is the replacement of a Ford Escape, which was basically donated by Selco years ago. It's a hybrid battery operated vehicle. It's got about 150,000 miles on it. The battery replacement on that vehicle is about $8,000 or more. So if the battery goes on that vehicle, it'll basically, become scrap metal kind of a deal. So we're looking for a replacement on that. We're also looking at a security upgrade at stations 2 and 3 to have a fob system. I believe those are the last 2 buildings in town that haven't been done. Fire headquarters has been done in last year or so, and then another year or 2 out, we have we're starting to talk about the replacement of our rescue. So that would be all of our capital items that we're looking at right now. I understand it'll be more favorable if we get the override on that to fund those, but I just wanted to put that out there. Those are the 3 pieces of major pieces of equipment that need to be replaced in the next few years.
Mark Adler?
Thank you, Judy. Jim, actually, maybe it's a question for Kevin. So to put in the security fobs, which makes perfect sense, would that come out of the public buildings, be through their responsibility or their budget?
They would oversee the project. It is a request of the fire department. It's about $31,000 to do those 2 stations, which is currently funded in the capital improvement plan that we've recommended in fiscal projection 1. So close integration, but it's a request of the fire department.
Is it the request that makes it work like that? When Jim said that they were the last 2 buildings to get this system, do each of the buildings, the other buildings, did they all have to pony up the funds for that, but it was just organized by public buildings? Yeah, how does that work, in the interdepartmental responsibility and budgeting?
Well, it all comes from the same pool of funds for the capital improvement plan. I'm not sure how long the other buildings have had fob access in them, but certainly when we build the new buildings, they normally get installed, or they do get installed in them right now. I'm not sure what the timing was and how the other ones were funded. This is the first request since I've been here.
Okay, that's fine. I was just curious. Thank you very much.
Any other questions from the committee? Any questions from the Board of Selectmen on the capital? I'm not seeing any questions from the public. And again, please use the raise the hand if you have a question. I'm not seeing any. Well, again, thank you, Chief. We appreciate it very much. And now I think we're going to move on to emergency management.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, hello, everyone. I'm Seth Colby, the Deputy Fire Chief here in town, and also the Emergency Management Director. So I'll keep it simple tonight. I'm not asking for any extra staff, so that should make it easy. The budget for emergency management, as you can see, is pretty small, and that's because it primarily functions as coordination between all the municipal departments, as well as coordination between the town and the state Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency. So the bulk of the budget is the $9,500, which is a grant match. So every year we put in for a EMPG grant, which is an emergency management performance grant. It's based on the population of the community. So based on our size, we get $9,500 each year. It's kind of a guaranteed grant. It's not a competitive one. So, but the community is required to do a dollar for dollar match. So that's what that is. So this past year, we used it we had been using it for a number of years for our radio equipment that kind of supplemented the radio budget for both the police and fire departments. But because we were hopeful that the town was going to approve the radio project, we didn't want to spend the grant on that. So we steered clear of that. And this past year, we used it for a thermal imager, as well as some other various rescue equipment, and a new command board set up for the car that Chief Owner had mentioned earlier that Mrs. Donahue donated to us. So that's going to help outfit that car. So that's pretty much it. I don't know if there's any questions for me.
Any questions from the Finance Committee? Again, please use the raise the hand. I'm not seeing any. Any questions from the Board of Selectmen? Again, use the raise the hand. I'm not seeing any. Any questions from the public? Please use the raise the hand feature. I'm not seeing any. Thank you very much. And so we'll now move on to Planning and Economic Development.
Thank you.
Good evening, Finance Committee. This is Kristen Lass, the Assistant Town Manager. I oversee the community development departments within the town of Shrewsbury that include the Conservation Commission, the Planning and Economic Development Department, the Planning Board, the Zoning Board of Appeals, and the Building Inspector's Office. This evening, I also have Bernard Cahill, the Town Planner, and Patty Sheehan, the Building Inspector. So I'll give you a brief overview of the overall makeup of the Community Development Division, and then I'll go into the details of the Planning and Economic Development budget. I will allow Mr. Cahill to comment on some of the past projects that the department has performed and some of the upcoming projects that we see and our justification for the budget request, and then I'll turn it over to Ms. Sheehan to deal with the Building Inspector's Office discussion and the Board of Appeals. So as you can see on this slide, the staffing plan does not grow substantially based upon the current projection and fiscal projection 3. Some of the things to note is some of the positions within the Community Development Division, specifically Planning and Economic Development, are funded through fees that come in through the Planning Board. So if the override does pass, we are proposing to shift some of the Planning Board fees that currently service salaries for an administrative assistant over to the general fund. So that's really the main salary staffing change there. There's no requested increase in staffing for any of these departments. So with that, if you just move the slide forward to Planning and Economic Development. Thank you very much. So again, this shows this change of the administrative staff coming out of the fees and going into the general fund for 0.25 FTE. Also not shown in this staffing plan for Planning and Economic Development is a assistant town planner that comes out of the fee account as well. If you move the slide forward again, please. And one more to the budget, and then we'll go back to the projects. I also just want to bring to your attention in your Google Drive under supplemental documentation, there's a memo from myself to Town Manager Mizikar from January 2021 that outlines some of the large-scale projects from calendar year 2020, our goals as a department moving forward for 2022, the fees that are collected by the Planning Board and the Zoning Board to support those operations, and then the request. So again, the budget is pretty cut and dry, no major changes. If the override does not pass, we cut some additional training and conferences. But if it does pass, we again transfer those funds to stabilize the staffing from the planning fees. So if we move back one slide, I'll let Mr. Cahill talk about some of the projects that the Planning and Economic Development Department worked on in calendar year 2020, and then our outlook for 2021.
Thank you, Ms. Lass, and thank you, members of the committee. So I'm going to be very brief tonight, but I just wanted to pull out some of the highlights from calendar year 2020. So I think, as many people are aware, the Newtown Center zoning district was approved by a town meeting last August, and it has opened up a vast potential for increased tax revenue and development in the town center. We've received multiple inquiries already from different developers, and of course, I think everyone's aware, or most people are aware of the Beale School on Maple Avenue, and the RFP process going on right now. Also last year, for economic development, we created a permitting guide for all businesses across all town departments. So this has received some pretty good praise from not just people, other staff within the town, but also from developers across the town. This is not just for planning and zoning applications, but also for any department. So it kind of guides people and developers through the entire town process across all departments. When you are trying to open a business in town, say, and whether or not that includes on the ground construction or just retrofitting a site. Furthermore, we received a local rapid recovery planning grant that is actually ongoing in this year. And the purpose of this grant, and 125 communities across the state were awarded this, we were one of them, is the intent of it is to analyze the fallout from COVID in the town center district for businesses. And then also, once that data has been analyzed and gathered, is to plan for a post-COVID recovery among town center businesses. And then finally, last year in the calendar year 2020, we completed the permitting and began the oversight of the Edgemere Crossing project. So that was 2020. And in 2021 right now, I mentioned the local rapid recovery planning, which is ongoing. We're going to be finalizing a new planning and zoning handbook this year to help streamline applications for new developments that are specifically focused on zoning and planning. We completed the open space and recreation plan, and we're working on some finalizations for the state on that. That was completed just last month. And we're hoping to work with the selectmen to designate, a border committee for its implementation, so we can start implementing the goals of the open space and recreation plan. And I think COVID has exposed a great demand for outdoor recreation in town. And then finally, we have a lot of large-scale projects coming our way. We are shepherding the Edgemere Pointed Hills Farm, Centec North project, and the public safety building projects through the planning process. And we'll be conducting, of course, their oversight of their construction through completion. So those are just a kind of a taste of what we're going to be doing and some of the highlights from last year, and also what's been ongoing and is currently ongoing for this year in 2020. And after that, I will give it back to the mic back to Ms. Lass.
So that concludes our presentation regarding planning and economic development. We're happy to take questions now regarding that budget, or move on to the planning board and take questions after that. So whatever you prefer, Ms. Chair.
Well, why don't we see if there are any specific questions. So Finance Committee members, please use the raise the hand. Okay, I'm not seeing any. Board of Selectmen, please use the raise the hand. Beth?
Hi, Judy. Thank you so much. Kristen, if you could just speak a little bit again to how a successful override vote will benefit economic development within the town. I believe we have discussed hiring a full-time economic development coordinator.
Sure, and Mr. Mizikar certainly can chime in if I'm missing any pieces. In fiscal projection 3 for fiscal year 22, that economic development coordinator is not in the plan, but with the override stabilization fund, we hope to plan for that person to come on board in future years, and also to establish a department head of a town planner. Right now, Mr. Cahill is not classified as a department head at that level. So the 5-year staffing plan that I've been working on with the department and Mr. Mizikar addresses our thought process to further grow the planning and economic development department within the next 5 years, that hopefully would be sustained through the override funds.
Thank you.
Dennis?
Hi, thank you. Hi, Kristen. I did have a couple questions about the economic planning. How have we been? Have we been negatively impacted by not having a full-time person for the last few years? It seems we have a lot of opportunity for companies to come in, i.e. this space, and we just haven't been able to bring in the business that I think would benefit us on the commercial side. So I'm just trying to get an understanding of what is holding that back, and do we need more resources in that area to increase that?
Sure. I can address that, certainly. I mean, when I came on board as the town planner 10.5 years ago, I was the only person. I was the town planner staffing the planning board and the zoning board and trying to muddle my way through economic development. Over the past few years, we've been able to grow the department to have 2 full-time staff, a town planner and an assistant town planner, and a half-time administrative assistant, with myself being the de facto department head, and again, still muddling through the economic development position. So I think the town could greatly benefit from an economic development half-time or full-time position to directly do business outreach, to assist the planners in the liaison between all town departments to navigate permitting and to work with landowners on acquisitions and the like. So I see a huge benefit from an economic development individual on staff. It's not something that you can contract out. Right now, the planning staff is doing everything they possibly can to benefit from grants and outside resources to grow economic development in the town. But I think that we're at a pivoting point right now where we would greatly benefit from that position.
If I may have a follow-up question, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Lately I've been seeing on Shrewsbury Cable and other stations, other towns advertising, come to our town, we have this, we have, I think Westboro or Marlboro has a couple of nice ads. Westboro has a big billboard on Route 9 when you go down, really pushing their town. How do we compare to those other towns in staffing of our economic development and in funding of it? And it may not be a one-to-one comparison, but I just...
Yep. So Marlboro is very unique. They use the majority of their motel, hotel, and meals tax to fund the Marlboro Economic Development Commission, I believe. And they have an executive director and several staff, and also have the funds to do those types of advertisements, as well as publications, going to trade shows, bringing people into town and doing that. The town of Westboro also funds an economic development coordinator and has a pot of money set aside as well to do those types of advertising. So if the override does pass, we don't just see it as an opportunity to bring another staff person in, because that's not always the right answer. We also see it as an opportunity to do future studies, future marketing, and working with other boards and commissions to put ourselves in the best light moving forward.
Okay, so basically, an override, if we get that, would hopefully make us more competitive and help us to catch up with these other towns.
I believe so. If it does not pass, we will do the best we can possibly do, as we have been. But certainly we would be at a more competitive advantage if the override does pass.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
Vikram?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question was more related to what you covered with Dennis, Christian. I was concerned about if there was any correlation you felt with the passage of the override and the long-term success of many of the projects you have in the planning and economic development group. So I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about that more. You did cover a lot of it with while answering Dennis's question. I do understand that.
Sure, I can just expand a little bit more, and it not only has to do with staffing, but if the override does pass, we'd hopefully be able to pay for the assistant town planner's salary out of the general fund rather than relying on fees, because we never know what kind of year we're going to have related to fees. If you look at the memo that I did submit in January, we had some steady years of between $16,000 to almost $17,000 in, excuse me, I'm looking at the wrong line item. Between $33,000 and $48,000 in fees. And then we had a banner year in 2019 because we had the Edgemere drive-in project come in and some other large commercial projects come in. But 2020, we only had about $30,000 in fees. So we want to be less reliant on fees for staff and perhaps use those fees to promote planning and economic development within the town. And that would further our mission as well if the override does pass. And it's always looking strategically moving forward. We don't want to just do planning to do planning. We want to hear from the community, understand what their needs are, understand what the business needs are, and take that strategic approach moving forward, which the override would afford for.
Thank you. Thank you, Kristen. No more questions, Judy.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any further questions from the Board of Selectmen? Dennis, is your hand up again, or is that? Okay.
I apologize, I forgot to lower it.
Okay, I just checking. All right. Any questions or comments from the public? Again, if you've just joined us, please use the raise hand. Okay, I'm not seeing any. Christian, I'll turn it back over to you to continue with, I guess, is it the planning board?
Yes, the planning board. Thank you. So on the screen right now is the planning board budget. There is no change between fiscal projection 1, 2, or 3. This budget is pretty vanilla. There is a stipend for each planning board member. Some members choose to take it, others do not. The advertising is generally for when we're doing zoning bylaw changes, advertising for the public hearings, and then the rest is to support our board members if they choose to attend a conference or a training and the like. So this is quite a small budget, $1,850 that has remained constant over the course of several years.
Okay, any questions from the committee? Hannah King?
Hi, Kristen, where do we pay the $495 Metro West partnership out of? What line item does that come out of for our budget?
I believe it comes out of the town manager or the board of selectmen funds, but Mr. Mizikar could probably clarify that. And it's $500.
It's in the town manager's budget.
Okay. I would just like to acknowledge that, one of the things that we don't see from time to time is a lot of the ways in which folks who work for the town also participate and add value to other groups, and really just want to call out Kristen's. I think she's the public co-chair right now of the partnership and does a tremendous amount of work. And we also get a lot of value out of that relationship that we have. One of our folks we know well, Jason Palich, is actually the executive director of it. And, considering the value we get and recognizing the financial position we're in at the moment, I do think it would be worth considering in the future increasing what we as a municipality pay to the 495 Metro West partnership, because I think that there's a tremendous amount of value that we get in advocacy, both at the state and the federal level, that is worth, a higher level investment, especially as we are one of the larger communities who's a member of the partnership. So just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. Judy, you're muted if you're speaking.
I apologize. I couldn't seem to get the cursor onto to turn the microphone back on. Okay. Any questions from the Board of Selectmen? I'm not seeing any. Any questions from the public? And if you just joined us, please use the raise the hand. And I'm not seeing any. So that will now take us to the Conservation Commission.
Mr. Mizikar, would you like me to do this, or would you like to?
Sorry, and then I was on mute. It doesn't matter either way, Kristen. If please handle it, please.
Sure. So this is the budget for the Conservation Commission. Really, again, a very vanilla budget with about $1,800. We did increase the budget from fiscal year 21 across all projections for fiscal year 22 related to supplies and dues and memberships to afford our committee members to to get training and to join the various membership groups. So again, a very small budget. The staff person for this commission is actually paid out of the stormwater fee. So there's no staff associated with the Conservation Commission budget.
Okay, any questions from the Finance Committee about the Conservation Commission budget? I'm not seeing any. Any questions from the Board of Selectmen? Oh, Hannah, is your hand up?
Sorry, no, I'm just faulty in putting it down.
Okay, all right. Any questions from the Board of Selectmen? Oh, Dennis?
I just have one question. I know a lot of these positions are paid out of fees. So basically that means that's fee money that we can't use somewhere else. Is that what's happening? So we're not saving anything by paying out of fees. We're just, moving the money from one type of expense to another.
Yeah, so the fees that we utilize to fund some positions are obviously have a direct relationship to that position. As Ms. Loss had answered before, the assistant town planner is paid from planning board fees. The challenge with that is just what she addressed, is that they're subject and variable to economic conditions and other activities, and just aren't as stable as the general fund. So in this example, conservation agent, Mr. Brad Stone, has has been funded through the general fund prior to the establishment of the stormwater utility. But given his large role in that, that is an enterprise fund. It is a sustainable source of rate revenue that we can rely upon. So there's no real challenge there. But you are correct in that many other towns choose to use those fees for non-staff related mission-driven activities of their planning and economic development departments, whether it's education, outreach, advertising, things like that. So we are foregoing that. But it is really directly attributable to the really recent introduction of planning into the town's core mission, which only occurred in 2010. So we're still trying to wean ourselves off of the fees and into the general fund budget.
Okay, and that was going to be my second point. Was it sounds like we haven't really made it a core part of Shrewsbury for the last X amount of years. I guess probably going all the way back.
That's correct.
Which again could explain why we continue to find ourselves in these difficult economic circumstances, because we know we want to grow our commercial base, and everyone tells me when I talk to people out here that, well, why can't we grow the commercial base? Well, you're actively trying to. There's sort of a new view within the town of Shrewsbury and within the management team in Shrewsbury to say we have to actively grow the commercial base and not be a residential only type of town. And I just think that's something we need to highlight, because we are asking for a lot of money, money that, I don't like to pay any more taxes than anyone else, but money that I think is needed, because we're at a crossroads in Shrewsbury where we want to be in the next 5 or 10 years. And, part of this money you would get would help sort of formalize that we are going to be trying to grow economically. It would give your team the tools to do that.
That is very true. Yes.
I just don't think that the community understands that Shrewsbury has to change what we've done in the past. We have to become a different type of town, and that costs money. So thank you very much. I definitely appreciate the presentation and filling me in.
All right. Any questions or comments from the Board of Selectmen? Any questions or comments from the public? If you've just joined me, please use the raise the hand. Okay, I'm not seeing any. Then we can move on to the building inspector.
Yeah, so we'll turn this over to the building inspector, Patty Sheehan.
Hi, so I'm going to be presenting the building inspector's budget for tonight, and I've been the building commissioner here now for going on 11 years. I'm entering my 11th year, but I've been a town employee for 24 years. Since the building inspector budget is primarily consists of staff, I'd like to give you a summary of the staff in our department. We have one full-time plumbing and gas inspector, Joe Riley, one full-time electrical inspector, Dale Blue. As you may know, we took over the electrical inspector program from Selco in 2019. Alex Moriarty is one assistant building inspector, and John Zakharevich is our second assistant building inspector. We share an administrative assistant, Emily Larson, with the planning department. When the planning department and building inspector's office merged in May of 2019, Kristen Rapolo is a full-time administrative assistant for the building inspector and also staffs the zoning board of appeals. And Dave Lyons is also plumbing and gas inspector, mechanical inspector, also assists with water and sewer in occasions, and does some inspections with the fire department, which specializes in their kitchen operations. So he wears many hats, and Dave Lyons has been with us for over 20 years. So as far as, I'd like to talk a little bit about how we have navigated and managed during this COVID time. We, in 2017, went fully online with a building permitting system. I have to say that that building permitting system became very critical tool for us during conducting business during the COVID time. We're 100% paperless. We can collect fees 100% online. This really kept us going with permitting, inspections, without causing any delay to people doing work on their projects. That's reflected in the fees that we collected for 2020, $750,000 in permit fees collected, which is an increase of $112,000 from the prior year. During the months of this year, January, February, and March only, we've already collected over $579,000 in permit fees. This directly reflects in the volume of work that's taking place in the community and the volume of work that we're handling in our department. I have to say that during the COVID time, we really did have to navigate doing some types of remote inspections, putting different inspection processes in place. We actually developed a model that was approved by the state and was implemented by other municipalities. So we took a lead in that and make sure that we could continue to navigate our projects to keep, particularly homeowners, because there was, as you may know, there's a lot of home improvement projects that were taking place during this time. So we managed to keep all of the community working, so to speak. And that's reflected in the teamwork that's developed by the building inspector's office. I really want to recognize all of the staff that I just listed and say that they've gone above and beyond. We work in an A team and a B team format. That means everybody answers phones, everybody looks for plot plans, everybody transfers calls, figures out what callers may need, and helps the public that are contacting our office as best as possible. Everybody has really stepped up and worked as a team to make sure that we get those phone calls answered, even though we've been working with fewer staff in the office and then working at home. We also have to thank the IT department because they enabled us to be able to answer phones from home to make sure that we answer calls in a timely manner. I also want to recognize Deputy Fire Chief Seth Colby. Seth and I continue to follow a model of providing permit review meetings to help projects coming into town to navigate our permitting system, to make sure that they know what permits would be required of them, to answer any questions up front. We continue to do joint inspections together and communicate on a daily basis. The deputy fire chief position has been a very important role or position for the building inspector's office. I also just want to make sure everyone knows that the primary responsibility of the building inspector's office is public safety. Knowing that I have such a good team now put together, it's the first time that I've had 2 assistant building inspectors, which is great to work with. I just want to make sure that you know that in Massachusetts, we're really short-staffed with certified building officials. I want to make sure that we retain our staff so that we can continue providing a good service to the community of Shrewsbury, and to make sure that we ensure public safety. So that's the summary for the building inspector's department, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions from the Finance Committee? Please use the raise the hand. I'm not seeing any. Any questions from the Board of Selectmen? I'm not seeing any. Any questions from the public? And if you do, please use the raise the hand feature. Okay, I'm not seeing. So thank you for that. And Patty, are you going to also cover Board of Appeals?
Yeah, so it's just, so the Board of Appeals just has a very small budget. It's similar to like Planning Board and the Conservation Commission. It's actually staffed by Bernie Cahill, the town planner, Kristen Rapolo, the administrative assistant in my office, and Rowan McAllister, who is the new assistant town planner, who's actually doing a great job for the Zoning Board of Appeals. So that is the staff, and you maybe just want to know that the Zoning Board of Appeals has been very busy and actually getting challenged with many different applications and different projects that have come before the Zoning Board. So yeah, that's all for the Zoning Board of Appeals.
All right, any questions, please, from the Finance Committee? Please use the raise the hand. Any questions from the Board of Selectmen? Any questions from the public? I'm not seeing any. Thank you very much, and thank you for all that you do to keep the town running and to keep the homeowners moving along and getting their services taken care of.
Thank you.
All right, so at this point, we're going to move on to the Board of Health.
So again, this is Kristen Lass, the Assistant Town Manager. I'll just give you a brief overview of the Human Services Division. That consists of the Board of Health, the Council on Aging, the Commission on Disabilities, Veteran Services, and the Library. This evening, we have representatives from all of those departments to give an overview of their budget. Just before you'll see the staffing plan as it currently sits, and then with the projections moving forward as well. And I'll let the individual departments speak to that. So first up is the Board of Health. I believe we have Karen Clark on the line. She is the Director for Public Health for the town of Shrewsbury, as well as the city of Worcester and the other communities within the Central Mass Public Health Alliance. This is just a brief slide of the mission of the health department. We've been involved in an intermunicipal agreement with the city of Worcester for, I believe, 11 or 12 years now to provide our public health services. This year, more than ever, we have used those services and understand the value of public health. I can remember last year, we were all sitting in the selectmen's meeting room, and Ms. Clark gave an overview of what was happening in China and Italy and other communities. And we were just on the cusp of the COVID-19 pandemic coming here to the US. So we listed a number of accomplishments over the past year for the health department, but I will let Ms. Clark speak to the budget. We are within our intermunicipal agreement, have that contract signed, and generally increases at a 2% rate. This next year will be, this next intermunicipal agreement will be increasing a little bit more, and that will be with the help of some federal funds that we receive as well. So Ms. Clark, I'll turn it over to you, and then we can go back and forth if necessary.
Sure. Good evening. Thank you for having me tonight. So first and foremost, I just really want to thank Kevin and Kristen for their leadership and support. I don't have to stress enough to all of you that it's been a very long year, and certainly we're very excited and hopeful now that we have 3 vaccines, but certainly we have a long way to go. And that's part of the rationale for some of the increases. So I'm just going to go over what the response has been from the Worcester Division of Public Health in our partnerships with the communities that are in the Central Mass Regional Public Health Alliance. I also just quickly too want to acknowledge Kerry Stockwell, who's the administrative assistant in the office, who has literally been air traffic control for the thousands of phone calls and emails that have come in from very concerned residents over the last year, and all of the work that she does to support us so that we can do our jobs. So, you know, as you know, the pandemic has not only had an impact on our daily lives, but has been a tremendous stress on the local public health system. And for over the last year, the Division of Public Health, which is 26 full-time professionals, have been responding to COVID-19 in a myriad of ways, which I'm going to go over shortly. Despite the pandemic, the Division of Public Health and the Alliance will continue to work towards national public health reaccreditation. We were the first accredited multi-jurisdictional health department in Massachusetts in 2016. It's hard to believe 5 years have already passed, but we do need to look at reaccreditation, which helps us be the gold standard that residents can expect from their local health department. This, however, does have a cost attached to it. It's $15,000 in fees. We also need to hire a consultant, estimated at about $30,000, and the city of Worcester will be furnishing the funds for this. Along with reaccreditation and COVID-19 response, the Special Commission on Local and Regional Public Health has come out with a robust set of recommendations, not only around shared services, but also around workforce development. And my husband just pulled up and the dogs are going to bark, so just give me 1 second. All right, this is the fun of working from home. So we're going to be continuing to unpack regionalization, data collection, and workforce development and credentialing. All of these factors have influenced our need to increase the IMA assessment. Some of the things that we've done in regards to COVID-19 and future workload requirements, national accreditation, and implementing the recommendations of the Special Commission on Local and Regional Public Health. This has included significant increase to our workload, which is primarily at this point 7 days a week. Immediately when the pandemic hit, I reassigned all 26 DPH staff to do contact tracing, coordination, shelter operations, logistics support, etc. for the Alliance. We recruited, trained, and coordinated medical volunteers for contact tracing and vaccinations. Data analysis, we've constantly looking at age and trends, monitor and report daily case counts and addresses for first responders, daily phone calls and webinars with Region 2 FEP Coalition, which is the hospitals. Right on cue, boys. Sorry about that. But we're working in concert with our Region 2 partners, the boards of health in Central Mass and all of the hospitals, Mass DPH and CDC, and also synthesizing and implementing what seems like daily changing state guidance. We've consulted with the school administration, worked with school nurses to help us do contact tracing, cluster identification, and mobile testing for schools. We've conducted a multitude of meetings with long-term care facilities to provide guidance and support, coordinated with Mass Senior Care to ensure consistent messaging and resources, provided guidance on emergency dispensing site planning and setup, providing technical assistance, responded to a significant uptick in COVID-19 education warnings and noncompliance at restaurants. As you know, we have been supporting staffing and also been providing financial resources for the regional emergency dispensing site, which we've had for the Alliance up until recently at the Worcester Senior Center. And the costs that the city has had to incur include hiring a volunteer coordinator, vaccine site supervisors, technical support from our tech services, costs for laptops, iPads, wireless plans, PPE, ancillary supplies that don't come with the vaccines, costs for sharps disposal, feeding 500 volunteers, custodial support, police details, approximately $18,000 for an on-site paramedic, printing supplies, etc., etc. We've also had numerous requests from the school and others across the Alliance for our medical director to provide guidance, daily and now weekly press conferences for Worcester and the Alliance, and we've conducted multiple town halls to provide education and guidance. And we really expect that much of this work is going to continue for some time into fiscal year 22. And we don't know yet how long immunity from the vaccinations may last or what our future role is going to be, but certainly this is going to be something we're responding to for some time. So after lots of conversations internally and also working with Kristen and Kevin, who've been in leadership roles with the Alliance Governance Group, and also Kevin had served as a commissioner with the Local and Special Commission on Regional and Local Public Health. We really felt strongly that all of the Alliance communities for the next IMA would need to increase their assessment fee by $1 per resident. So that's why there's an increase that we have for this upcoming fiscal year, plus the 2% that we normally would have for our yearly IMA assessment. So I will stop there because I know that was a lot, but I just wanted to kind of give an overview of what's been going on behind the scenes in our response to COVID over the last year.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
If I could just take a quick minute. So I actually think someone should go to Karen's house and see if that's actually her and not a robot, because the work that her team and she personally has done to the benefit of the town of Shrewsbury residents, the entire regional alliance has just been truly amazing. It's been an incredible year for public health. Kristen and I can probably count thousands of phone calls that we've had with Karen or her staff. They've always been available to us. The city of Worcester has been a true partner to the town of Shrewsbury. We've had a lot of stressful calls between each other. We've all fought for the same goal, and Karen's kind of the hub of all that in the COVID response. So her work needs to be acknowledged, and it's truly benefited the health of the town of Shrewsbury. And these dollars that are on the screen here really mean nothing in comparison to the work that they've done for the last year. So I just wanted to acknowledge that and thank Karen.
Well, thank you for those comments. Thank you, Karen. Hannah?
Thank you. Certainly would just echo Kevin's sentiments and also acknowledge that, again, Kevin has had a leadership position, not only on the commission, but a continuing leadership position in the state on our efforts to continue to improve local and regional public health. And we always use the Central Mass Regional Health Alliance, Public Health Alliance, as our illustration of what it looks like when it's working, to have communities banding together to share services so that they're more efficient and more effective. My only question is, I fully support the notion of the increase that would be necessary as a part of the partnership. I'm just not seeing that on this slide. So I just didn't know, Kevin, if you could speak to that.
Yeah, so we would plan to use either CARES Act funding or ARP funding for the FY22 portion of that. And then we are also, or Karen's staff has submitted a response to an RFR for a funding, which would be really a business analysis of the true cost of running the Alliance, which would allow us to have a better understanding on long-term fees. As you know, Rep. Kane, with the SAFE 2.0 bill and what those requirements would be, and just try to reassess where we are as a 10-year-old alliance, 10-plus-year-old alliance, and go from there for the future.
All right, thank you.
Dennis?
Good, thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I would like to thank Karen and her team for all the work they did. I mean, obviously there was a very interesting year and probably one or two more to come. So thank you very much for that. I am curious, because we're part of the Alliance, I'm assuming that is actually helping our bottom line significantly. by being part of a larger alliance, not having to do everything on our own, not having to hire probably as many staff per se. Again, don't want to be redundant, but I'm trying to point out that Shrewsbury's been doing a lot over the years to try to keep our costs down, and that we've managed things very, very well. So just want to bring that up and see if that is true, that this alliance is benefiting Shrewsbury more than what we're putting into it.
As long as there's no Worcester City councilors on this call, yes. Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it. You know, you know, as Rep. Kane said, you know, I've been trying to do my effort in advocating for public health across the state, and the model that we use, we have plenty of room to improve. The simplest way to look at this is, prior to joining the alliance, we had 3 FTEs in the town of Shrewsbury dedicated to public health, and now we have a team of 26 or 27, and our costs have gone up only incrementally. Really, since the IMA was put in place the first year, it's been 2% per year. So we have an epidemiologist, we have medical advisors, we have proactive public health work and managing true chronic public health illnesses and concerns in the community. So it's not just this responsiveness, it's not just inspecting restaurants and food establishments, which really just meets a minimal level of public health expectations. It's doing community health surveys, community health improvement plans, and really trying to improve people's health. So we benefit immensely from this. It's much greater than dollar for dollar.
Yeah, great, thank you. I think it's good to point that out.
Okay, any questions or comments from the Board of Selectmen? Not seeing any questions from the public. And if you've just joined us, please use the raise the hand feature if you'd like to speak. I'm not seeing any, so thank you very much, and we'll move on to the Council on Aging.
Thank you.
So this evening we have members of the Council on Aging as well as the Council on Aging Director, Holly Luke. So I will let them give their presentation this evening to the Finance Committee.
Thank you.
Hi. Yep. Hi, good evening. I'm Holly Luke, the Council on Aging Director. What I would like to start with is, first, I need to thank everybody that made this first year for me here as manageable, as easy as possible, I suppose. And that starts with my staff of Cynthia Willis, Donna Messier, Pat Babin, Christine Moriarty, and Elizabeth Peterleitner, as well as my nutrition manager, Beth Murray, and the volunteers behind the scenes that don't get recognized enough. But with that said, what I would like to do is just kind of go over the general fund, if you will. And at the top are the salaries. And you'll notice just a small increase. And part of that is due to the outreach coordinator hours going from, I believe that they were originally from like 22 to 24, and now they're at 32, which couldn't have happened at a better time. Elizabeth started with us in November. The other small increase was for my transportation coordinator for the classification and compensation study, which is coming out of the formula grant, which I'll get to after. Moving down out of salaries, the utility and telephones come from my personal cell phone as well as my outreach coordinator cell phone. So that way, both of us can be reached outside of business hours. The hospital and medical, you can see that it says Reliant DOT exams. That is for our van drivers for their yearly physicals. Services not classified, those items obviously that come up during the year that we weren't expecting, that's where those funds will be covered. Books and periodicals, you'll see where it says Route Match. Route Match is the software that we use for our van transportation to take all the ride requests that come in. Print and postage. If you look back in previous years, that number used to be escalated. I think last year's was $15,000 and now it's down to $2,000. We were able to do that because now our newsletters are printed free of charge by including advertisements into there. And so the $2,000 pays for the actual mailing of the newsletters monthly. Office supplies speak for themselves. And car allowance and mileage. So the Meals on Wheels gas stipend, for every route that we have, each Meals on Wheels driver receives $5 as compensation as a thank you. The mileage reimbursement is $1,100, and much of that reimbursement is coming from our outreach coordinator, which we're expecting to be working out of the senior center, out of SYFS, out of the library, St. Anne's Food Pantry. So we're looking to have her travel more than what they were doing in the past. Dues and memberships obviously speak for themselves. Training and conferences likewise. And that is how I sum up the general fund. And as you can see, we have many other funds. The one thing that I do want to bring to everybody's attention is the formula grant. In previous years, which is $79,000, in previous years, we had to spend that grant money down to $0. The new way they're going about it from that started back in November going forward is we no longer have to spend the formula grant down to $0, so we can actually carry over whatever we don't use. And there is what they call a green guide, which gives us specifics on how we were supposed to spend it, but that's even a little bit more loosened now, I think, because of everything that's going on. So we basically still have to follow those rules, but there's a little bit more leniency for the spending of it. I don't know. Can I ask if anybody has questions up right like now before I keep going forward?
How much more? I mean, yes, but do you have a lot more, or would it be?
I just have a few other things that I want to touch upon that the COA has done.
Okay, why don't we do that and then we'll go to questions.
Okay, fair enough. So you can see in the budget that we presented, or the budget that you have, we have 5 basic accounts that we work out of, and we split it out accordingly to the way we need to obviously spend the funds down. And our goal is to always try to give back at the end of the year if able. We have been awarded this year some grants. We've been awarded the Shared Winter Streets grants in the amount of $45,000, as well as the taxi livery and Hackney transportation for $40,000, as well as an MCOA field demonstration project for our nutrition, which is just under $5,000. I already spoke of the annual formula grant, which is just about $79,000, and we have 2 more grants that are pending that we are hopeful to receive. And the other thing that I just want to leave off on is the work that myself and my team has done during this entire year. And when I say entire year, I go back to January because that's where I began. And for COVID, I'm going to start at the top. For COVID-related calls, we've taken in just about 1,471 calls. For total vaccinations booked by the COA team, 214. Now, I'd like to just mention that that was 2 days ago, and today we took in probably 50 more appointments. Total seniors that we know that have booked their own, 618. We are also offering COVID car services where we will scan the cards of the seniors once they get their second vaccine, and we'll hold that information at the senior center up to 1 year in case somebody should lose their card. Outreach home visits, 43. Referrals made to outside organizations such as ESWA, SYFS, or SHINE, 126. Wellness calls, 1,309, and I believe that number to actually be lower than what my team actually did. AARP tax assistance, 171. Fuel assistance, 34. Share the Warmth applications, 45. Meals on Wheels clients, we have roughly 195 clients. The Are You OK program, we have made over 1,066 phone calls. Birthday calls, 1,063 phone calls. The food sharing pantry, which has been up and running now for probably 3 months, we've had 33 people. And through a program that we did early on back in August and September, which was called Feed a Senior, where we received roughly $2,000 in donations, we were able to offer 4 months of free grab and go out of the senior center. Again, at no cost to the seniors that called in. Through the collaboration with the New England Police Benevolent Association and Shrewsbury Firefighters Association, we were able to give away 150 free meals for Thanksgiving, Christmas, and St. Patrick's Day. Through the assistance of ESWA, we were able to give out 125 boxes of food that range anywhere from 5 to 25 pounds. We've given out 32 file of life cards, and there is a correction to the gifts for seniors. It says 257. It was actually 557. And that is all I have.
Okay, thank you very much for the work that you've done. Hannah King?
Thank you. Thank you, Holly. And thank you to the Council on Aging Board for all the work that you've done this year in support of our seniors. You guys have done a terrific job, and with Holly's leadership. Holly, can you just, I missed it, the increase in the part-time from the fiscal year 21 budget to what is under our fiscal projection 3, what is the increase there for?
So the outreach coordinator, the position went from, and forgive me, I think it was 24 hours, and it went up to 32 hours at this time.
So in this coming budget, it will go up to 32 hours, or it already is there?
So it already is up to 32 hours at this time.
So are we covering that under some CARES Act funding or something that we got in, or?
No, so some of that will be covered under the formula grant to take care of the rest of this fiscal year.
Okay.
And if I could just add, the other difference is the partial year hire for Miss Peter Leitner. So it's the total amount in the fiscal year 21 budget only represents a part of a year. So the 45 and the 36 cover the same number of weekly hours. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, any other questions from the committee? Any questions from the Board of Selectmen? Mr. LeBeau.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge Holly and the team's work with the senior community, particularly when a lot of the vaccine hysteria, so to speak, started early on. There were a lot of folks who really didn't know how to start to access the services. And I just want to recognize the whole senior center staff stepping forward and doing that. It was exactly what we thought they would do, and they did a great job at it. So thank you.
Beth?
Hi, thanks, Judy. I just wanted to ask Holly if you could speak a bit about the ways in which you'd be able to utilize dollars if the override were successful in reference to the outreach coordinator position.
Certainly. So already that Elizabeth Peter Leitner, our outreach coordinator, has exceeded my expectations in assisting us in receiving, part of the grants that we have received. But as I mentioned quickly, what our plan is to actually have Elizabeth in the senior center less time and out in the community more. So she would be working some hours out of the library. She'd be working some hours out of SYFS if necessary, some down at St. Anne's Food Pantry, even some stuff, even at Starbucks. So my goal is to have Elizabeth where the community wants her and where the community is comfortable for her to be, for her to be able to give the assistance and the services that we are able to offer. And to do that, we need to have her with us more to have that happen, to record all the statistics and to increase our outreach services in Shrewsbury.
Thank you.
Kristen Less?
Sure. I'd just like to ask Holly if I know some of your board members are on. Would they like the opportunity to speak in any way? And certainly they've been instrumental this year in helping you guide your first year of service with the town of Shrewsbury and some of the directives of the strategic plan. Did any of the board members want to give any commentary?
Kristen, if I can just mention something that, I want to personally thank the board. Their time that they have in the town, gave me great depth of what I needed to, or what was expected of me to do. And quite honestly, I couldn't have asked for better, assistance, just a better backbone to get everything done. I'm sorry, I'm just at a loss.
Okay, I see a hand up. I guess it's Cheshire Menden. Sheshi Menden. I see a hand up.
Shasta, do you want to unmute?
Are you able to unmute if that's an issue? Christian, are you able to unmute for her, or?
It's the gentleman who's the chair of the Council on Aging. Unfortunately, I'm not able to unmute, but.
Okay. Oh, I see. Okay.
The unmute button is on the bottom of the screen if you're able to. It's a microphone.
Shashi, if you want to speak, could you just wave so we'll know that we should continue to wait? Okay. Unfortunately, it looks like he's having technical difficulties. So I guess then we'll move on to the Commission on Disabilities.
Was there anyone else on the Council on Aging that wished to speak, or was Mr. Menon the spokesperson this evening?
Okay.
All right. I don't see any.
Let's move on to the Commission on Disabilities, please. Thank you very much for your presentation.
So, Madam Chair, the Commission on Disabilities budget is a budget that supports the activities of the commission, which is an appointed body by the town manager. It's a very small budget of $500, consistent every year.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the Finance Committee? Any questions, comments from the Board of Selectmen? Any questions, comments from the public? If there are, please use the raise the hand. I'm not seeing any. Thank you. Let's move on to Veteran Services.
So we have Justin Souza, who is our Veterans Services Director for our regional district with the towns of Shrewsbury, Grafton, Westboro, and Northborough. So I will let him present the budget for the evening.
Thank you, Kristen. Hello, I'm Justin Souza. I'm the full-time director for the Central Mass Veteran Service District. We serve Shrewsbury as well as Westboro, Northborough, Grafton. I have two part-time agents. One is 19 hours a week, and he works out of the Westboro office mostly. And I have a 12-hour a week agent who works out of Shrewsbury, Tuesday evenings and Thursdays. On my budget here, you will see that The budget is broken out by population between the 4 towns. My board of directors is the 4 town managers or their appointees. Typically, the assistant town managers will be those appointees or in charge of overseeing the board for their town. Shrewsbury pays 42% of that of the operating budget for the district, as well as the additional expenses you see here. So under the Veterans Benefits budget, the purchase of services, the utility is for a telephone system in our office in the senior center, and the regional veterans assessment is the amount of expense that is assessed by the host town, which is Grafton, for the operation of the district. And that is 42% of the overall cost of operating the district budget. And then that is billed out quarterly by the host town, which is Grafton. Supplies, you'll see office supplies there. That's how we pay our utility telephone bill. That has always been $200. And as the cost of the utility telephone has risen, they've kept that $200 there. Then there is other charges and expenses, the veterans benefits line. That is the amount that pays the Chapter 115 recipients that are mandated a benefit under state law, Chapter 115. It was at $161,000 for FY21, and due to COVID, they've dropped that down, as you can see, to $150,000. Using historical information as far as probably looking back. I don't know how far you look back, Kevin, exactly, but I know they looked back over some previous years to see how much we historically spent, and then they still left a cushion in there, but they were able to take back some money to help the town with its budgeting this year due to COVID. Let's see, so the total operating expenses that Shrewsbury incurs under the district last FY21, the current budget year, was $212,960, and for FY22, you can see the 3 different projections are all the same amount of $203,479. So pending anyone's questions, that is my budget report for the Finance Committee.
All right, thank you. Any questions from the Finance Committee? Any questions from the Board of Selectmen? And if anyone just joined us now, any questions from the public? And if you do have a question, please use the raise the hand. I'm not seeing any questions for you this evening, so thank you very much. And we'll now move on to the library.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk. Have a good night.
So we have the library director, Priya Rathman, her board of trustees, and I believe some staff members. So we'll move forward with that.
Thank you, Kristen. Good evening, Finance Committee members and Board of Selectmen. I'm Priya Rathman, the library director. First, I'd like to thank the Library Board of Trustees for their support during my first year as director, the guidance provided by the town manager, and the overwhelming support I've received from the community. I would like to provide a quick review of what's been going on at the library this past year and give you a glimpse of the ways in which staff members have risen to the challenge and worked as a team to provide the kind of excellent service that our community is used to. Now, if you give me a moment, I would like to share slides. Thank you. Pivot, grow, adapt, evolve. This has been a mantra since April 2020. The library's vision of being a vibrant community hub, welcoming people of all ages and backgrounds to engage in intellectual pursuits, to to access information and technology resources, to enjoy leisure activities, and to build community connections has been the roadmap that's guided us as we transitioned to remote services, digital resource promotions, and virtual programming. Librarians quickly adapted to the needs of the community during the pandemic and became very creative while planning innovative services. Library cards were issued online, digital content creation became our main focus, and Facebook and YouTube became our best friends. The library trustees supported us in our efforts, and the Friends of the Library supported with funding for virtual programs. We are still adapting and evolving, and our service models keep changing. As always, our focus has been on literature, lifelong learning, and promoting leisure activities. The book clubs that met in person at the library quickly started meeting on Zoom. Staff who used to provide book recommendations across the circulation desk started posting them on Goodreads, Instagram, Pinterest, and many other forums. They've also started providing customized book recommendations. Summer reading and winter reading programs were offered virtually, and there was enthusiastic participation from our patrons. We've been offering programs to support all-round development for babies through seniors. We provide information and services that help people become informed citizens, offer programs that celebrate community diversity and enhance cultural awareness, provide training for career and job search success, and provide services for niche groups of people such as adult English language learners and people living with dementia and their caregivers. We've been facilitating art workshops, health and wellness programs, music performances, a knitting club, a genealogy club, and scholarly lectures and talks on social justice topics. We adapted very quickly to restrictions dictated by COVID. The health and safety of staff and patrons is our main priority. Keeping that in mind, we reconfigured staff workspaces, repurposed the community commons to make space for all the holds materials, and relocated the self-checkout machines to facilitate a no-contact pickup and checkout area. We use the meeting rooms and the young adult room to provide access to computers, a printer, and copier. There are 7 computers available for patrons to book appointments. We've also been adding displays of new books and themed materials for people to browse and check out. You can see books requested by patrons on tables along the length of the hallway. All of you are familiar with the layout of the library. This is the west wing of the library. That's the west entrance across from the common. And you can consider the community commons, the young adult room on one side, and the meeting rooms on the other as a current mini library that is accessible to the public. Staff are working very hard processing all the requests that patrons submit, pulling the items from the stacks, dealing with huge volumes of interlibrary loan materials, working with quarantining rules, and fielding phone calls from patrons and helping them place holds on items. Just to provide a perspective of the volume, in March, 5,293 patrons checked out items through our no-contact self-checkout stations. We borrowed 3,710 items from other libraries and loaned 1,845 items to other libraries. The library has a robust online presence. Regular updates about new programs and services are posted on the library website and communicated through our email listservs. The e-resources available through the library are compilations of reliable and vetted information and are available 24/7 to library card holders. Many staff hours are spent on aggregating relevant information to publish on the website and post on our Facebook, Twitter, and 3 Instagram accounts. I had provided a chart with the historical survey of usage for the last 30 years, along with the supplemental materials. And it's not a surprise that whether it's circulation numbers, program attendance, reference requests, or interlibrary loan data, we've seen a steady increase in library usage. This chart that I'm sharing on this slide compares usage stats of fiscal year 19 and fiscal year 20. Despite the pandemic forcing library closure in March 2020, physical materials borrowed in fiscal year 2020 is 83% of the previous year, and there is a 22% increase in e-book usage. When we plan our materials budget, we have to constantly evaluate the popularity of print books versus e-books. What we notice is that e-books are getting more and more popular because they are easy to access, but print materials are not getting less popular. Shrewsbury is a community of readers, so we see an increased demand for both print materials and e-resources. E-books can be accessed on different platforms. Overdrive is the platform available through CWMARS, where you can download e-books and e-audiobooks. The other popular service, Hoopla, is for streaming movies and TV shows and downloading e-audiobooks. As you can see, there has been an upward trend in usage of both Overdrive and Hoopla over the past 5 years. And as the demand increases, we've been allocating more funding for these e-resources. We realize how important it is to foster community connections. So our creative staff have initiated a number of activities to engage the community. 2 examples are the 01545 Rights Pen Pal project that connects kids and seniors, and the 01545 Together community art project that people of all ages could participate in. Our response to the national and local outrage against racist behavior was to organize meaningful lectures on social justice topics by faculty from area colleges such as Assumption University. And as many of you know, we kicked off 2021 with an interview of Professor Ibram X. Kendi, author of How to Be an Anti-Racist, that received an overwhelming response from our community. I'm very proud of the partnerships with other town agencies that have been strengthened during this year. The library has partnered with the Parks and Rec Department and provided a story walk at Lake Street Park. Community members have really appreciated this outdoor activity, and what started as a summer collaborative has continued through the winter, and we plan to keep it going through this year. We've been sharing resources and event information with the schools and the senior center. We also celebrated Women's History Month by inviting local women leaders to record and share their stories. We did a fun collaborative project with the Shrewsbury Library in the UK. We each did a recording of behind-the-scenes activities at our respective libraries and shared them on Zoom with patrons on both sides of the Atlantic. Patrons from both communities were very engaged and curious about similarities and differences between the two libraries. And there were more similarities than differences. Our technology librarians have been undertaking 3D printing projects. Last summer, they printed visors for shields and donated them to massfaceshields.com. Lately, they have been printing objects requested by residents. Here is a picture of a couple objects that were requested by young patrons. I was told that the image on the left is Ozma's tiara from the sequel to The Wizard of Oz, and the one on the right is a figurine of a knight and centaur, then painted by the patron. Our children's librarians have been doing a phenomenal job with 3 story times every week that's broadcast on Facebook Live. And then there's also bilingual story times, pajama story times, and STEM-related programs to entertain kids. Here's a video clip of our children's librarian, Sanya, doing a story time with her infant daughter. This is another example of staff resilience and adaptation.
Yeah, so we're going to do, this is the way we're going to start with clapping our hands. Ready? Keep your hands together for clap. Oh, good job. Here we go. It goes like this. This is the way we clap our hands, clap our hands, clap our hands. This is the way we clap our hands so early in the morning. Good job. Now ready for stomping our feet? Here we go. This is the way we stomp our feet, stomp our feet, stomp our feet. This is the way we stomp our feet so early in the morning. Good job. Ready for wiggling? Here we go. This is the way we wiggle around, wiggle around, wiggle around. This is the way we wiggle around so early in the morning. And last but not least, let's do dance. Do whatever you like. This is the way we dance and play, dance and play, dance and play. This is the way we dance and play so early in the morning. Yay!
I know it's been a long evening for everyone, and I thought it would be fun to watch Sanya and adorable Willa. Now, if I can get back to my presentation. Sorry, just a sec.
Yeah, so we're going to do, this is the way we're going to start with clapping our hands. Ready? Keep your hands together for clap.
I'm sorry.
Good job. Here we go. Goes like this. Yeah, so we're going to do, this is the way we're going to start with clapping our hands. Ready? Keep your hands together for clap. Oh, good job.
Sorry about that. Children's librarians are also incredibly busy providing take-home craft kits. It's a great respite for families looking for activities to keep their kids busy. About 100 craft bags are prepared and left outside the library, and in a matter of hours, they are all picked up. Libraries are traditionally in the business of providing information. The formats in which information is available may change, but our commitment to providing accurate, well-researched information stays strong. Librarians facilitate lifelong learning experiences. They plan and coordinate programs for people with varied interests, and promotions are done on various platforms. They have to learn about new technology and provide technology assistance and help bridge the digital divide. Our outreach librarian has been delivering books and other materials to homebound patrons and folks in elder care residences. We anticipate an increased demand for library services after the libraries open, with people looking for communal space, community connections, and virtual and on-site programs. Habits that people have made during the pandemic will be hard to change. After all, it's easier to attend a library program on Zoom from the comfort of a home during a snowstorm. Our static level-funded budget is adequate to fund current services. In order to meet greater demand when the library opens, the trustees had requested an addition of a 19-hour reference librarian position, additional page hours, and 3 seasonal circulation aides. We would like to increase library page hours to meet changing needs of special services during the pandemic, such as curbside services and the requirement to quarantine materials. The part-time reference librarian will help us meet growing demand for technology training and support, website and social media work, and for providing virtual chat reference and planning and implementing in-person and virtual programming. The summer aide positions will help manage the increased volume of work in the summer. That is a conclusion of my presentation, so I'm going to stop sharing my slides.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions from the Finance Committee? Mark Adler?
Thank you, Judy. Priya, in past years, we've always walked a very tight line with the Mass Board of Library Commissioners and their requirements. We've tried to get enough municipal funding to meet the state boards. I'm going to speak slowly so that way you guys can pull this up as I'm getting it because you know where I'm going. To meet the state board's requirement. And in tough years, it's been really bad. I remember many years ago, I mean, 2000, must have been 2008, we got special accommodations. Everyone did because times were very tough. Has there been something equivalent both for 2020 and for 2021, or perhaps going forward into 2022?
Thank you for your question, Mark. In fiscal year 2021, the MBLC and the state has relaxed the requirements. So we don't have a materials expenditure requirement for fiscal year 21. Obviously, we have to maintain the hours because the library has not been open. For fiscal year 22, though, we would have to meet full compliance. In order to meet full compliance, the municipal appropriations requirement is 1,455,307, and the town manager's fiscal projection 1 allows us to meet the state municipal appropriations requirement and the materials expenditure requirement. In fiscal projection 2, there is a cut to the materials budget, which will bring it below the municipal materials expenditure requirement, whereas fiscal projection 3 will allow us to plan for the additional positions that the Board of Trustees has requested.
So again, if I may, Priya, what is the materials requirement amount for fiscal year 22, please?
For fiscal year 22 is $189,190.
Okay, so we're pretty much just hitting it at first projection. Looks like it's trivially short.
Right.
But it's significantly short in number 2. And in number 3, we would exceed it.
Yeah.
I mean, I know these numbers are not big. They're not big in the scheme of the town. They're not even big in the scheme of the library, but nevertheless, every dollar has to go somewhere and every dollar has to come from somewhere. And so it gets very tricky when we make these budgets. And if I understand it right, and maybe I'm just saying this for other folks who are watching, library materials, the requirement that the state puts, the State Board of Library Commissioners puts on municipal libraries, it cannot be supplemented by donations, by foundations, by friends groups. This has to be commitment by the municipality to the library program, right?
It can actually be supplemented by state aid or friends funding.
So it could be.
Yes.
Have we needed that? Have we used that recently in the past?
We have used state aid funds. Typically, the past couple years, or even longer than that, the trustees have approved state aid funding for audiobooks. The Friends have paid for museum passes. That also comes under the library materials budget.
And that would then meet the state requirement for what we would have to hit.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all.
You're welcome.
Hannah?
Thank you, Judy. I just wanted to acknowledge, Priya, all your amazing work this year. You know, you started during the pandemic onslaught, and you've really made the most of the opportunity to respond to the community needs and continue to keep the library open for people in the sense that they could get materials. So I just wanted to thank you for all that you and your team have done over the last year.
Thank you very much, Hannah.
Carlos? Carlos, you're still muted.
Thank you. Thank you, Priya, for that presentation. I know this pandemic has been very trying on people, but it's been wonderful to see what the library staff have done to really reach out to people and be a place for comfort for people still in their homes. I know the big topic that we've been talking about the past few weeks and months across our committees and boards has been the override. And I know that one of the potential things that could happen if we don't pass an override is the closures of our media centers in our public schools, in our elementary schools. And I was wondering if there was any opportunities to increase the collaboration between the library and the schools in the event that an override does not pass.
Sure. Thank you, Carlos. We are very happy to collaborate with the schools. We have been initiating, and they've also been reciprocating our partnership opportunities. The media specialists in the elementary schools, the middle school, and the high school are, having discussions at the beginning of the school year, especially with the children's librarians, the young adult librarian, myself. So we are definitely happy to provide whatever support they need.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Any questions or comments from the Board of Selectmen? Beth?
Thank you, Judy. And Priya, thank you so much for your presentation. I just wanted to acknowledge the work that you've been doing as a member of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force that was newly formed here in the community, but also really bringing that back to your role as library director and finding opportunities to engage the community in the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion with the many programs that you've been offering in a virtual format. One of the silver linings, I think, of the pandemic was the number of people that were able to attend the presentation with Dr. Kendi. Never would we have been able to have that many people if this was an in-person event. And I think that was really a highlight for me of this time that we've been sort of without being in person at the library. I also just wanted to thank you for finding a way to get people into the library for materials. I know that the day that I was able to pick up Holds again was a very wonderful day for me. I was running out of things to read. I did want to ask you one question related to the override. I recall even from as far back as my time as serving as a trustee of the library that there's always a request for additional staffing, especially in the summertime. And I do believe there's funds that would come from a successful override that would benefit the library. And I was just wondering if you could touch on that a little bit.
Sure. Thank you, Beth. Thank you for your compliments and for your appreciation of the work that library staff have been doing. So if the override fails or the override passes, the additional positions that we are requesting are a part-time reference librarian position, a 19-hour position, This has been on our request for the past few years. And this year we see how busy we are during the pandemic with programs to be offered on Zoom. It's actually a lot more work than programs that are offered at the library. And we anticipate a demand for library usage, that it's going to increase. The librarians now are so busy doing all the stuff that I explained in my presentation, adding e-content, providing virtual programs, and keeping the community engaged, that librarian position would certainly help ease the volume of work for our adult services team staff. And the other two requests that we had are for circulation aids in the summer. As you know, the library gets really busy in the summer. And we've asked for we've requested an increase in page hours. So if the override passes and we are able to get these positions, it would really help library staff. Thank you.
Thanks, Priya.
All right. Any questions or comment from the public? If you do, please use the raise the hand. I'm not seeing anything. Thank you very much. Thank you for all that you do, and thank you for your presentation. We'll now move on to the operating support budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the operating support budget is a budget that provides administrative support in various areas to all departments, and in some instances that includes the school department. So it's a growing portion of our budget. It grows in disproportion and much faster in recent years than the general operating departments of both the town and school. In fact, it has trended over 6% in the previous 5 to 7 years when we look back at it. The largest aspect of the operating support budget includes group health and life insurance, with group health insurance being the town's contribution, which on average is slightly less than 70% of the total contributions for employees and retirees' health insurance. So that figure is at least 13 million or greater in each of the scenarios that we present this evening, and obviously makes up the vast majority of this $16 million line item. A couple other areas that I want to touch on: group health insurance, the Medicare employer match, unemployment compensation, and general insurance make up the line items within operating support that benefit both the town and the school. And general insurance, of course, provides our liability insurance, our workers' comp insurance, and professional liability insurance for all employees and volunteers of the town. Beyond those various line items that support both the town and the school, the most significant other line item is the IT budget, which falls here, and we will discuss that separately during Saturday budget discussion. So I'd be happy to answer any questions about this. These are all normally considered fixed costs, something that we just use a trend analysis or known health insurance rates and apply. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have related to this budget.
Mark Adler.
Thank you, Judy. Kevin, to what a reason do you attribute the higher percentage than normal increase in this part of the budget? Is it because health insurance is just a crazy financial train wreck, or is there something else going on?
No, that is the primary reason. Health insurance trend has been in the upper single digits or 10% over that time period that I identified. So it's certainly driving this cost. We've been very fortunate in some ways because of the pandemic and discretionary medical procedures and visits being down, at least fortunate in the near term that premiums are low, The West Suburban Health Group is a joint purchasing entity that the town participates in. It includes 11 municipalities where we pool and self-fund our health insurance for our employees. It includes well over 6,000 subscribers from those 11 communities, and Shrewsbury is the second largest community that participates in that. And I do have concerns with that trend over time. Obviously, it's very steep. And unfortunately, with the announcement that many have heard within the last week or so that Fallon is no longer going to be providing general commercial health insurance. General commercial health insurance is health insurance that's not government subsidied. So it's Fallon is not only the largest health insurer of Shrewsbury employees, but is also the largest health insurers across the West Suburban Health Group. Our closest next plan is nearly 25% more expensive than the plan that Fallon offers. So I'm very concerned with this in the future years. Of course, Fallon will be around through the end of fiscal year 22, but we will be working with the West Suburban Health Group over the coming months in determining how we can best position that group to continue to provide the best value to its subscribing towns.
If I may, Judy, follow up on that. There's something, what concerns me is, and I mean, obviously this concerns you, it's not a great secret, but it seems like every 5 or 8 years or so, we come up with some adjustment, some fix, some change to what way we're doing it, either because the group we belong to has come up with a new way, or the connection to Medicare is going to change because of policy reasons, or something that makes an adjustment here. But then when that change doesn't happen and we have these annual increases that are far above what we can handle, and so it kind of it puts extra pressure on the rest of the budget. And that's quite significant for something that's, I'm just looking at the numbers now, it's 1/10 of our budget is just life and health. And it's not like life and health are trivial. They're a very big part of what an employer does. But it seems like every year we have to worry about this. We have no way to manage this, of course, because that's the nature of it. And in some ways, this fuels our structural deficit because there's very little we can do about this. I'm sorry, maybe I'm just complaining to the wind because we all agree on this. There's real, like what else? What are we going to do? But it seems like every year the siren goes off. There's a problem here, and there's not much we can do about it.
That's correct. I mean, being a part of the joint purchasing group through the West Suburban Health Group is a big benefit to us. Being self-insured, we can control premium increases. And we do work very hard for the West Suburban Health Group to mitigate these costs. And it'll be an interesting year coming up. There's two aspects. There's the viability of the West Suburban Health Group, and then there's our, obviously, first and foremost, we're always looking out for what's best for the town of Shrewsbury. So what other options do we pursue and consider for health insurance, and our options there to make sure that we're doing the best that we can as the employer and providing valuable health insurance, but also managing those costs that are very difficult.
Keep it up. Thanks, Kevin.
All right, any questions or comments from the Board of Selectmen? Any questions or comments from the public? If you've just joined us, please use the raise the hand if you have a question. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to move on to the Finance Committee.
So, Madam Chair, as the committee is likely very aware, the budget for the Finance Committee includes $233,000 in salaries. No, that's not true. The largest line item there is the $233,000 reserve fund, which is used across all departments for any unexpected and unforeseen challenges that come up through the fiscal year. It's our only relief fund without going back to town meeting to manage a budget challenge. The balance of that really is just other minor costs for memberships of the committee or any minimal travel or training that members may wish to participate in. So the reserve fund has been stable and healthy over the previous years, and we haven't had to dip dip into it through good financial management, but the committee has always been there to support. We certainly use it each and every year, and it's a good safety valve. So the only change really over those three projections is obviously living within our means within fiscal projection 2. If we do have to find various ways to just cut funds, and then we will 100% live within our means, fiscal projection 3 with additional budget resources in every department. So I'm confident in those various numbers as we look forward.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the Finance Committee? Any questions or comments from the Board of Selectmen? Any questions or comments from the public? If you just joined us, please use the raise hand. I am not seeing any, so I believe that concludes our budget presentations for this evening. Can I get a motion to continue the public hearing until Saturday, April 10th, I believe at 8:30 a.m.?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, well, it's been moved in second. Mark Adler?
Yeah, sure. Aye.
Vikram Chhabra?
Aye.
Dennis O'Connell?
Aye.
Aaron Howard?
Aye.
Hannah Kane?
Aye.
Jordan Rubin? Jordan Rubin? All right, Carlos Garcia?
Aye.
Mark Murray?
Aye.
Judy Vetter? Aye. All right, so the public hearing is now continued until April 10th, which is actually item number 5, which is review of our meeting schedule. So just to confirm, it is at 8:30 on Saturday.
That is correct.
All right, then item 6 is any other business?
I have none.
Okay, then item 7 is correspondence, an email from Susan Chadden, 6 Old Salem Circle regarding town building projects. Email to the finance committee from Stanford 562 South Street regarding Proposition 2.5 override. Email from Representative Kane regarding the grant awards for the fire department. And then also another email from Representative Kane regarding the federal fund information. And at this point, can I entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Judy, can I just ask you one question?
Sure.
Are we taking up the letter draft that you sent out on Saturday as part of our meeting?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So we have a motion. Can I get a second? Okay.
Second.
All right. Mark Adler?
Aye.
Vikram Chhabra?
Aye.
Dennis O'Connell?
Aye.
Aaron Howard?
Aye.
Hannah Kane?
Aye.
Jordan Rubin? Carlos Garcia?
Aye.
Mark Murray?
Aye.
Judy Vetter? Aye. This concludes the meeting for this evening, and I'll see you guys all Saturday, April 10th at 8:30.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you.
Good night.
Aye.
Thank you.
Good night.